Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Wild Woman podcast. You may be new here, or I hope you're around a while and you'll stay a while if you are new. But if you are, I rarely do this, so I just reminding myself to say if you do enjoy the guests, the conversations, please do like, subscribe, and share because it is my passion. I've said this so many times. I was guided to start this podcast almost 2 years ago by a woman who interviewed me, and it just snowballed from there. But it's been a huge part of my own, I would say, soul journey awakening since my experience with cancer in 2016. And I was just talking to my guest today about that, sort of following that flow, listening to that inner voice and sort of getting in sync with it when we can, well, I know when I can get out of my own way. And it's been a journey, and I think we're going to talk a lot about different aspects of that. But if you're interested in that journey yourself, sort of really supporting yourself to follow that path of your soul, the greatness that you're here for, really, and then really these conversations are women and men sharing their own path and what they've learned along the way, because we're really at a pivotal time on the planet. Even I meet people every day, and even if we don't know what's going on exactly, it doesn't really matter. We all know we're in a period of huge change. So I think the more that we, I know from my point of view, be sort of aligned up and sort of anchored and steady and clear, I think that's the only way through. But on that note, my guest today is Maureen Whitehouse. She's a spiritual teacher, a miracle mentor. I love that word miracle because I've been experiencing many little miracles in my life recently through something very difficult, which we'll talk about, which is interesting as well. She's a teacher and a guide for those on the path to awakening, and just she'll share this as well, but just I thought it was interesting. She says in 1996 she had this near death experience, but it wasn't one that was necessarily brought on by something very like a fatal accident or something like that. It was through her intensive study of A Course in Miracles, if you've heard of that. If not, I'm sure she'll share more about it. And at that time, and I really related to this, not that I had a similar life, but she was a wife, mother of two, successful commercial actress, model, doing everything she could to create the picture perfect life. I completely identify with that. I think many of us do our best to do that in the belief that it will fulfill us and, everything then will be okay. But she felt like she was failing miserably, living the American dream, but lost and unfulfilled. And then it all changed. And I can say, with a completely different story that's quite similar. I wouldn't say it was maybe it was a near death experience. I don't know. All I know is when as I was diagnosed with cancer and I eventually surrendered, everything just cracked open and my life has never been the same. And I went on a path that I had no idea, could never have planned, and I still don't know from day to day. But I'm living with that, I hope, sort of inner guidance. That signal, I think, is stronger because I've been listening to it. So, yeah, welcome, Maureen.
Well,
That
thank you.
really touched
Thank you.
me.
I have to comment on something you just
Mm,
said that I love so much, that when we recognize, so I say this often, and it's a great way to begin the podcast. I truly, with all of my being, know, not just believe, but know that everything is a miracle or a miracle in the making. And so your story, what you just described, had you known that at the outset, that this was a miracle in the making, then it would give it gives us, it shores us up in a way that there's a mind that we can click into, that's our knowing mind. And I can't, I'm saying this, but it's more like this, our knowing mind. When we open this and shift to remember our miraculous nature, we all came in here the day you were born. Everybody knew it. Everybody was in awe. Here's a miracle arrived on the planet. Nothing happened. We're that miracle still. But with our eyes focused outside all the time on the this and the that and the often mayhem and chaos in the world, we get all caught up in that and forget to always default to our miraculous nature. the truth of who we are. Came in with your first breath. Every breath you breathe is connected to that. And we leave with our last breath, but we don't end there. Our miraculous nature is eternal. So we spoke just
Mm.
this much about that. We might as well start off with the big one. That's the obstacle to peace and miracle mindedness. Uh, Death. You
Yeah.
told me about your mom just
Yes. And
passing.
yeah. Sorry.
And
Yeah. It
you,
continues. Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
we look at that as, well, if there's this benevolent nature that we have that's connected to a benevolent source, well, what's up with that then? What's up with that? We're all,
Mm.
everyone here is seeing that as the big unknown, and instead of seeing it as a transition into a more amazing, expansive state of being that's completely whole and completely healed and completely connected to everything, we see it as this fearful trauma drama experience. And then we miss some of the greatest amazing experiences of our life if we look at it like we came in with that first breath into that little beautiful vulnerable body, and then have grown enculturated into this with lots of kind of limiting beliefs that were given to us by well-meaning people, adults that also believed in limited things. It's only natural that we can just stop right now and relax and forgive ourselves for being anything but we truly have been all along. Just forgetting our true
Mhm.
nature. It's so easy, and we know that it amps up in times like these when we're meant to remember, when we're kind of snap out of
Yes.
it, folks, snap
Yeah.
out of it. We have these trauma drama things that go on in life. And we also just spoke very briefly about this, how it's a setup right now for us to claim our miraculous nature. The world needs miracle beings now. It's not a question.
Mhm.
Open take out your phone, look at any news, and you're going to see all around the world chaos and mayhem. And that's simply because of one thing, that we forgot who we are. At any time there's pain or drama or challenge or things that feel hard and untenable to deal with, it's because we forgot who we are, not because we can actually sever that tie to who we are, but we can forget who we are.
Yes.
The good news is
Beautifully
that's an
that.
impossible dream. It's an impossible dream of separation from who we are.
So even amidst, because I'm sure there'll be people listening, and I've been there many times in my life, just lost in a I think I always knew, don't we? We always know, as you said, when we come in, we just, and we look at a baby. But I remember feeling that. And most of the women I've spoken to on this podcast will say they knew who they were. They felt
Yeah.
everything, they saw everything. And then something happens in life, just life, culture, conditioning happens, and it sort of shuts down. Even though I know, as you said, it's still there. But for many years, for me, it didn't. I think what happened, and I imagine listeners will empathize or understand this as well. I think it became so painful feeling who I truly was coming in, but then also that coming in and the feeling that nobody else around me feels that. Like, what do I do now? I feel I know who I am, but nobody else seems to know who they are. And
You're
we shut down.
mentioning, yeah, you're mentioning one of the ones that's one of the biggest obstacles. I know
Hmm.
this is one of the things we're going to talk about, but we might as well, again, it
Yeah,
seems like we're starting
exactly.
almost in
Just,
reverse to the
yeah.
big deal ones. And this is one that follows everyone to the top of the mountain in a spiritual path. You can let go of layers and layers of all kinds of things, but the one that follows people to the top of the mountain is attachment to the good or bad opinions of other people. And when you think of it, that's what started this whole thing. That we were all taught to perform for our teachers and for our parents and for the adults and the people around us. And when you think of things that have gone awry in your life, it's always because you listened to someone else, or emulated someone else and felt that that was more important than what your gut was telling you or what your heart was speaking to you. So
Mm.
now that we're in this place, like I love wild women. I love the wild women idea of the podcast
Yeah.
because even the world, the men in the world want more wild women because I would also say wise women
Mm. Mm.
because you on this planet, if you've survived any length of time and have gone through things like a cancer journey or things that are deeply, I'll say, upending and maybe tumultuous, severely tumultuous at the time, but in a way that takes you and and brings you back to yourself, then you know that what this has always been about is letting yourself be that wise one that you've been,
Mm.
that you can, even as a little baby, you can see it in their
Mm.
eyes when they first arrive, the wisdom as they're looking around and thinking, how the heck did I get here? I had this happen.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
true. I saw that in little baby's eyes the other day somewhere and said, "Oh my God," they were just like taking it all in. Like, what is
taking it
this
in.
place?
I
Yeah.
just saw something recently, and I'm not good with numbers to give you the exact um, numbers here, but it said that in the first 4 years of life for a baby, like they were talking about AI and how much, AI can absorb all this information. In the first 4 years of life, think about it, how much happens in those first 4 years of life, how children can actually like reason and get things connected. We learn more in those first 4 years of life than all the information that could ever
Mm.
come through AI to be able to be enculturated. So it's important that we now, as especially wise women who are often the ones who are in touch more with the children on the planet, that we recognize that what we want them to come in with and absorb from us is that absolute recognition of unconditional love. That
Mm.
unconditional love is it. Think about your
Mm.
cancer journey. What helps more than unconditional love? What helps
Mm.
more to transcend the fear that's going on in situations like that? Because it can be extreme fear, fear of the
Mm.
unknown, and to acknowledge that and respect that, but to know the thing that really gets us out the other side of that every single time is recognizing fear is the opposite of love. And we
Yeah.
thrive and we heal and we learn best and grow best with love as
Yeah.
our orientation.
And do you think, Maureen, like maybe is it changing, but that seems to be sort of, I don't know, the game, let's say we come into that we pop in here and go, okay, I'm going to experience this forgetting. Most of us seem to go through that. I can't say everyone. And then something, and it's happening more and more, isn't it now? This is the time. Like you had a sort of quite, as you said, a spontaneous, let's say, awakening, but maybe as a result of all the study you were
of
doing,
of
not
years.
just, yeah.
Well, so I'll go back just a little bit
Mm.
to talk about that. And I know one of the things that you were wondering is, did I have an inkling at a young age that I was my mystical self that I am today? And yeah, because I grew up, Catholic. And so I went to a Catholic school when I was young. And to me, there were parts of it that were heavenly. The school part could be very strict and that kind of thing and soul sucking at times, maybe. But what I loved the most is every Friday, and at that time in Catholic schools, we had 50 kids to a class with 3 classes to a grade and 8 grades. So there were thousands of kids. And
Mm.
every Friday we had to go to church in order to learn the hymns, the songs. And so the entirety of the school, the thousands of kids, would be singing on Fridays with this one nun in the front of the church, getting everybody
Conducting.
in
Yeah.
sync. And they'd parade us across the street to the church from the school. And the whole thing got us out of school, so we were kind of happy with that. But it happened just before they'd release us on Friday afternoon from the church after the singing. And I'm telling you, it could make me, I don't know if I was remembering angels or what, but it could make, like, I just would sit there in ecstasy because it was children's voices, you know.
Mm.
And then on Sundays I didn't want to go to church because it was scary to me, too many people. I thought I'm going to get sick, and like, you know, kids spontaneously get sick in church, and then you're thinking, oh my God, it's going to be me next. And so I would go at times when I was by myself in the churches in the morning, like on my way to school. I'd go and go to even mass in the mornings, because and there would just be the nuns sitting there in a row, and old ladies and me. And I just loved that feeling of that sacred space. And in the very early years of me doing that, that was when they didn't even, the priest wasn't even, it was all more mystical, because it was, the priest was facing away from us before, and
Mm.
not, it was the, you know, in Latin and things like that.
Mm.
And so it just brought me to another place. You know, that all went on the back burner as I went through life and college and everything. But then I started modeling commercial acting through a series of synchronicities, by the way. I was reading the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, by a guy who was a minister in New York City at a church, Marble Collegiate Church. And he talked about, we have a mind that can think positively. We have a choice. When I read this book, I found it on a table in my parents' home, and I said, can I take this with me? It was like spring break. My mother said, I don't even know how that book got there. And I took it, and I became like the poster girl for it. I never knew that your thoughts mattered. Like, I thought you just randomly thought. I was going through college and things. I didn't know that you could focus on being positive, and that that would beget things in your life that were more positive. So I did that, and in my own way, you know, walked the beach, and I just felt this urge to get healthy. And then I wound up through a series of events, all these things that I never talk about. I became a runner-up in Miss America, and then I wound,
Oh.
like, because I'm thinking, I was doing
What
things
were your
that
thoughts, or what were you imagining yourself
I
in
was
a?
imagining a
Mm.
life that was more expansive and adventuresome. And I right out of college, I taught science. I was a science teacher. And so I'm living down near the beach, and every day driving as the sun was rising from the beach. And I had studied science to be an oceanographer. I wanted to be, like, you know, I didn't care if I only had bathing suits in my wardrobe. I wanted to be an oceanographer. I thought of the ocean as this expansive thing. And then every day I'd leave it, like, as the sun was rising, to go to a classroom in a school in the city. And then I was like, this, I can't, I'm trapped in this school for the rest of my life. I just been through all the school. And so
Mm.
I was thinking expansive and that kind of thing. Little did I know, this whole series of events, like, very, very synchronistically and in a positive vein. And then I wound up in New York City modeling, and then modeling around the world. So it was this life that wasn't the life that I thought was expansive, but it brought me to a world that was very culturally rich and also very dysfunctional at the same time. I didn't know how to not orient on something that was not my true nature. I was a body, you know, and bite and
Mm.
smile for the commercials and hang the clothes on me for, and 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 it was becoming too overwhelming for me to be that superficial, when that little kid who sat in the church with the nuns in the morning was who I really was. And so I got to the point where everything, I had made my life so picture perfect, you know, the white picket fence, the dog that could be in commercials, everybody in my family, you know, perfect husband, perfect life. And I'm successfully, like, one of the most working people. By that time I'd moved to Boston, so it would be more conducive to family, but I was like the most working person in Boston. And I thought, this is it. This is the happy life. You know, I don't
Mm.
really, I can't do this. This is just not happy. And so between auditions, I used to frequent this new age bookstore, and I was on my way for a commercial audition, and I walked into the store and I was looking at the self-help because I had done the power positive thinking. So I knew all the self-help books and books from new thought from the 40s and stuff. And I was looking and I said, read it, know it, not, that's not what I'm looking for. When I turned, I saw this book that was underneath the window of the bookstore, and it was glowing at me. Like I just don't, I can't describe it. It was drawing me to it. And when I picked it up, it fell open to a page. It was A Course in Miracles. I didn't know anything at the time about it. And it fell open to one of the lessons. I am not a body. I am free, for I am still as God created me. And I literally just stood there, and it almost makes me want to cry right now. I just stood there in the store and cried because it was the exact thing I needed to hear. I'm not a body. I'm free.
Mm.
For I'm still as God created me. And so I got the book. I didn't even spring for the hardcover. I got the soft cover. I put it home in my bookshelf, and I'd walk by it like every day thinking, I got to read that book someday. And then ultimately, when I picked it up and started to read it, I saw how profound it was. And so I hid it under my couch and studied it for every day. No one knew I was doing it, by myself, for about 3 years, 2.5 years. And if it said, today you're the light of the world, and I felt like I wasn't, I did the lesson. If I wasn't, then I did it again. And I did it again. And I did it again. And if I felt like, I was giving people the finger on the road and I was the light of the world, I was like, nope, I couldn't do this. And so the voice of A Course in Miracles, if people don't know what it is, it's was channeled by a psychology professor, two very noted professors who were the head of the department and the assistant at Columbia University in New York in the 1960s. And she was an atheist, agnostic, and yet and Jewish. And she started to hear this voice saying, "This is A Course in Miracles. Please take notes." And so she started to take notes, and she said to her department head, I think I'm psychotic. I'm hearing voices. And he said, well, take it down. If you're psychotic, I'll know. And so he instead said, my God, this is profound, and keep going. So for 7 years, they worked behind the scenes with no one knowing while they're writing textbooks and things for the psychology world. And then it was published through a series of synchronicities. Well, as I'm reading it, said, I can't do this. It's saying, be like, I'm not, if you're real, if this is actually the voice of Jesus, then you have to help me here. And so I started to channel. At the time, I didn't know what, I didn't want to channel. I thought it was freaky and weird. I'm modeling, commercial acting. And so again, hiding it. And I started to hear the lessons being reinterpreted specifically in a universal way, but specifically for me, like saying things like, you're worthy, not sad, stupid, guilty, dumb, pathetic, all the things we can think about ourselves. But it was speaking, it was the divine. And I'd say, hear, feel. I didn't hear it in my head. I felt it in my heart. So I knew it was true, and I knew, and there'd be things that were said that I had to look up the words. I didn't know, you're not the purveyor of the universe. I didn't even know what that meant. And I had to look it up, and it was perfect, spot on. You're not the ruler of the universe, things like that. So after those,
and were you writing them? Sorry, Maureen, were you writing those down
I
as you
did,
were
I
getting?
write
Yeah,
them
yeah.
down so that I could hear them. Like that just helped me hear it better as well. And when I'd read them, I'd be so blown away, blown away in the way that we're talking about, that in a spiritual journey, the best spiritual paths that we can be on is, I highly recommend reading, Rumi poetry, reading things that open your Course in Miracles text that, like, I didn't understand it. but my heart was being fed every day. And we have to feed our hearts these days. We have to feed our
Mm.
hearts
Oh, wow.
and
Yeah.
and and be in that
So
place
important.
where we're in that world where we let ourselves be our true emblazoned selves, you know. Our hearts are meant to be on fire here, but not with this resentment and the pain that the world is promoting, with the love that we are, that we came here to express every day of our lives. So
Wow. I hear you got to, I want to jump up and down when you said that.
wild women.
Wild women, exactly. That's really what I meant is like coming back to that nature, like that knows who you truly are.
That
Like, 'cause that's,
and that's that
mm,
beautiful wild free, like think of that running
mm,
horse in the wild with, you know, the mane behind it, just like I've been going around the corral for all these years doing the right thing.
mm.
Somebody
Yes.
opens the gate and I didn't even know I could leave, and now I get to run into the hills and be that beautiful wild precious being that I started out this life as. You know,
Wow. That's a beautiful image. Sorry, that is a beautiful image because it's exactly how I felt even with cancer. And I just think people listening will recognize it, you know, this sort of hamster wheel we get on, and we're just,
hamster wheel.
and more things are layered on and more layered on, and a bigger mortgage and a this and a that. And then it's and I used to feel that until, you know, like you said, I did everything I thought I was supposed to do, even though it just
Right.
didn't seem to work. And
And you know, thank God though, when you look back, thank
yeah,
God,
thank
because
God.
if it worked, then the divine
Yes.
isn't the ultimate
Yes,
answer. Like it's so much
exactly.
easier to just let go to the divine who is perfect wisdom and perfect love. And instead of trying to figure this out all the time and thinking that we're a failure if we don't, when this was never supposed to be the main event. This is just
Yeah.
a blip in the screen, an impossible dream of separation from who we truly
Mm,
are.
mm,
So then what happened is I ultimately got to the place where I had done what everything that A Course in Miracles, like the what A Course in Miracles essentially is telling you the path of forgiveness. Forgive yourself. Forgive you didn't know what you didn't know. Forgive everybody who you think has done you wrong because that's who you are. The truth of you holds no resentment. The truth of you holds no um, animosity. The truth of you holds nothing of the past in the present that's going to affect your future negatively. So when we show up in this miraculous nature, in the present, we renew the past to create a new future in life. So think of the last minutes of the last headlines you read this morning if you woke up and read the headlines.
no.
Forgive the
Sorry.
past.
No,
That's
I
the
don't read the
past.
headlines.
That's the past.
Yes, yes, yes.
Come to this moment, wholly surrendered to the divine, and let that past be forgiven so that you can create a new future today based on who you really are rather than that headline. Rather than that headline. And you know,
Mm,
we talked
mm,
briefly about this. There is nothing that's more important on the planet today than being connected to your true self, because if you want safety and security in this world, that is the only place you're going to find it in within your wisdom within that self of you and your open heart that knows where to go, what to do, and where to be in this planet at this particular time in our evolution. That has to be a powerful, powerful, powerful petition for everyone.
mm.
I'm kind of coming out of the story, but this is the most powerful prayer. I'm paraphrasing it from what Jesus gave this in A Course in Miracles. Tell me where to go. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say and to whom, and I will to do it. Our mind, our hearts, and our will, I will to do it, and nothing more. That's where the ego typically comes in and says, you didn't do enough. You know, try this, do this, do this. Instead, listen to that divine will as your mind's clear, your heart's open, and your will is surrendered to the divine. Tell me where to go. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say and to whom, and I will to do it, perfectly aligned with divine will. I will to do it and nothing more. And if we just did that every day, we wouldn't be overextended, we wouldn't be overwrought, we wouldn't be over the top in our experiences. We'd be just aligned in this vertical experience of being able to be the channel of the divine that we are, showing up here at the
Mm.
right time in the right places,
Mm.
the, the healers that we are.
Wow, Maureen, and you're really echoing, and I just have to make it a little bit personal to myself what you shared because it is the true, it is the true. I've literally firstly been saying I didn't know those words from the Course in Miracles. I've literally in the last few weeks since my mother passed, every day got up and just said, "Show me," just I like basically, "Thy will be done." That show me what to say, what to do, what to be every single morning. It's
And you
just.
know, the
Mm,
fun part in having your mother just pass, and I know you
mm,
said you took
mm,
care of her, which is,
mm.
I have to say, I had a contract for our public broadcasting here to do for books I had just written to do a television show. And I opted to help take care of my parents while
Mm.
they were transitioning instead of doing that because I knew if I started to do a television show that I knew how what that entailed, how busy I would be. And there's nothing I feel more important than coming full circle in that
Yes.
experience. But wait, you know what I
Mm.
mean? Like right now, in that experience of you asking, your mom's on board.
Oh, she
Like your
is. Sorry, that's the
mom's on
point.
board. You can tell how
Yeah.
evidently they are. And when they know you as because sometimes when you're doing things like taking care of parents and that kind of thing, it's like normal mundane stuff. You're cleaning up messes, you're cooking, you're doing things like that. And they don't necessarily, they might feel the kindness and the love, which is exactly what I felt I had to give. Like, I didn't know when I was a spitting up baby, getting my diapers changed, that these wonderful people gave up their lives for me,
Mhm.
And so here I am giving back to with any degree I can to them now when they can't as take care of themselves as well. And I just felt like, wow, this is just so perfect to come full circle when they get to the other side and get out of this limited experience of five senses and move into that world of knowing everything and being at one with everything, they see you as who you really are. And they see those things that you did and the things that might have gone unnoticed, that the caring and the things that you held the space of. And I have to say, there's nothing more profound than that. I just have to finish the one story before I
Yes,
get back
sorry. I
to us
didn't
with
mean
this,
to
because
interrupt with that,
this
but
is
go
so,
with my.
this is no,
Yes.
but this is so good and important. And there's so many good stories that I want to prime the
Please.
pump for you for too with your
Mm,
mom, because I can feel her energy,
mm.
how,
And
how
yeah.
evident she is, and how talk about wild women. She's right here, right now with us, and holding that space of the divine with us. Very proud, very,
Mm.
very present.
Yeah.
So back to quickly just to say
Yes,
how I
please.
know what I know and how I've lived this for the last
Mm.
30 years now almost is, so I had said that I came to that place of forgiveness where I forgave every person in my life. And the last one was my brother, not for much, but my mother was Italian. So she was like, my brother was on a pedestal all the time. I could get A's in school and do everything right. And my brother was the one that, always got the praise and things. So it was, petty little thing, not a big deal that I was forgiving him for, but he was the last one that I forgave. And I was thinking, oh, wow, there's nobody in my life that I have any issues with. There's nothing going on that I like. How did that happen after all these years of concernedly like grappling and temper tantruming over the things that I didn't want to forgive? And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, there's one person left to forgive, and it was me. It dawned on me in that clarity of having all that kind of rubble in the past. It dawned on me, wait a minute, I've gone with me wherever I've gone. I'm the one who is perceiving everything in my life as painful or problematic or that. Oh my gosh, it was me. And so the kids were at school, and I, was used to hiding the book under the couch, but I had finished the lessons, and I was like, I didn't get this. I've done this for 2.5 years. And I'm like, I didn't get it. I wanted to cry. And I was so sad because I felt like Jesus became my best friend, and I'm now done with the lessons. And I didn't get it. And like it would say, today's the day and I'd say, didn't get it. And so I got on my knees in my living room next to a chair, and I just said, Maureen, I forgive you. And I started to feel like as if my heart cracked open. It felt like all that cement. Like, I don't know how many people feel this, but I felt like I literally had cement on my heart, and that I was shut down so much that through these years of doing Course in Miracles and then learning Buddhist meditation, because it would say be still, and I'm like, I don't know how to be still. I'm a New Yorker. I lived in New York City. I don't know how to be still. So I started Buddhist meditation, and it was such a compliment to like just focus on your breath. It's not complicated. Just breathe. Take an inhale, take an exhale, count your breaths. And then with this wisdom of A Course in Miracles, so I went to bed that night after feeling that elation of having forgiven myself. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, which was something that I used to be really scared. So talk about fear. I was really scared. I had the dog perched at the window, and I had like the scissors under my bed, the alarm on the house, and the kids were next to me in bed because my husband was out of town. That's when I would be nervous that God, if I woke up in the middle of the night, I won't go back to sleep. And so here I was, the kids are in bed, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I know it was 3 o'clock because I looked at the clock. And instead of feeling panic, I started to feel some cramps in my stomach. I was about to menstruate. And I felt the cramps, and I had always had really terrible cramps. Now I know that's my power center. Didn't know that then. We talked about give up your will to the divine. Didn't know that then. Didn't know that women are all powerful. Hear this, women, when you're in that place of feeling like this part of us, the core of us, the womb of us, where we can birth children, where we can birth a reality here. I started feeling the cramps, and instead of saying, oh no, here I go, I'm going to go, I said, well, I believe in miracles now. Heal this. And I took a big, deep breath into my belly, and I shot out of my body. Shot out of my body and into the heart of God. I can't, there are no words to that, because it was, I was at one with everything. I was at one, there's no this or that. There's no anything, but it felt like I was in a soft down comforter of love. And all there was love. It was only love. And I I was in that space of this is where and what we go to when we leave our physical bodies. We become at one with everything. The first thought I could think, because you can't think, it's you don't you can't think. The first thought I thought was, there's no judgment here. Remember, I grew up Catholic. So we learned about a judgmental God. When I said there's no judgment here, I started to come down from that, because I had a thought, started to come down in layers through experiences that were come again, mind blowing. And then I hit the place where I started to have the life revision. And in timelessness, I saw every detail of my life. But what was so interesting is that I didn't see my whole life. I saw the pain. I saw the painful experiences of my life, miscarriages, things that were big pain in my life. And instead of seeing them as pain, I started to hear a benevolent, rolling, thunderous chuckle that was saying, laughing, now you see how I see. Now you see how I see. And I was seeing all of those things through the eyes of the divine. Here's where you forgot. Here's where you forgot who you are. Here's where you forgot. We forget every day. I was forgetting I'm divine. It was never done at me or to me. It was me pretending I was somebody I'm not, being given like a cattle prod. Wake up, wake up, wake up here now. And and yet it was hilarious because I was the one who dreamt this dream. It was obvious to me that this is a dream of separation. The real reality is what I was. That's the real reality. The divine is everywhere. What I didn't see it. When I came through that experience, again, I saw every pain of my life in detail and saw that it was upended. It wasn't real. I had misperceived everything. And in the morning when I came back from that, many other revelations that were like personal to me, that the things that would wake me up completely. When I got back, I came back like this into my body and I was on fire, on fire. I felt like my entire body was on fire. And when I looked, I could see the kids in the bed next to me, and it was 7:30 in the morning, time to get them up for school. And I didn't know what happened. I just knew I was completely feeling like I'm on fire, like I'm a human torch. So I got up, and there was a bathroom adjacent to my bedroom, and I went into the bathroom to compose myself, to splash water on my face, and I put cold water in my hands. And when I went like this and looked up into the mirror, I saw myself as a spirit. I saw myself without my body, with eyes. That this part makes me feel every time. I had eyes that looked at me with so much love. That was the real me. And I was beautiful. Like I had worked with people all over the world who were considered the most beautiful people as models. And this being who was in the mirror looking at me was the most exquisite being I had ever seen, with these glowing eyes, golden eyes looking at me. And the first thought I had was, this is everybody. This is who we are. How did we forget? How did we forget that? And so that did not compose me. I went back in to get the kids to school, and I'm like not able to think. I still wasn't able to think. I was able to, you know, do the things that I did every day to get them there. But when I got looking at the things that I was looking at, it was exposed as divine. You know, the curtain was lifted. I'm at school watching the kids meeting the parents go get down, and I'm seeing love meeting love. I'm seeing blades of grass that look like emeralds. I'm hearing birds that are singing. That I'm watching. I wound up going to a store that I don't even know exists anymore, Kmart. That's a regular, like normal store. And I went to, because I was supposed to be getting a greeting card. I don't even remember what it was for. But I went in the greeting card aisle and I picked up a card, and it was like everything was making me almost fall to my knees, because I'm seeing the woman who dropped her kids off at school to go to work to paint the picture that's on the greeting card, and the people, the trucks, how did this get to my hand? Like, we don't think of how the things get, the food on the shelves in the supermarket. I'm watching people leave the with shopping carts, thinking that you orchestrated this. You were meant to smile to that person. Seeing everything we miss all day long. That lasted for 3 days for me, where I could not think and only appreciate. I didn't know if I'd ever have my mind back again, and I didn't know what was happening. And then I remembered, oh, pick up A Course in Miracles, because I went back to the text after I finished the lessons. When I opened the text, I saw the chapter called The Forgiven World. And it says, is there, you in all your life, you have never experienced anything so beautiful. And it was describing what I was in. And so kind of became after that. I didn't know what happened to me. I wound up at a Course in Miracles meeting thinking I'm going to pull these people off the ceiling. If this is what everybody, this happens to everybody. And instead I went, I was trying to say like, what happened? And instead I'm telling them and they were like, oh my God. And then so I wound up facilitating after that Course in Miracles meetings, after long story short, because I'm telling you way too long of a story now.
No, no,
But
no. It's
but I
incredible.
I wound up being placed, just like we were talking before this. When you wholly surrender to the divinity of you, which we all are, no one's left out. There's no one left out. Everyone's everyone's divine, but most of us have forgotten and we haven't concertedly tried to remember or have guides or people who are caring and knowledgeable with a capital K, knowing the divine to guide us. And we all deserve this. We deserve to awaken now. So for the last 30 years, it just like happened. I used to go on commercial auditions all the time and I'd drive to the place and go to the appointment. And instead of doing that, people started calling me. They could see that I could see through pain because at the Course in Miracles meetings, I was like, oh my gosh, they don't see. I thought I was gonna like what's going on? And then I said, but don't you see? And I started to say it. Someone said to me, Maureen, don't say it. They don't see. They don't see. Because now I could see through pain. So
So
for the
describe that.
last,
Yeah, when you say that, you could see through pain, emotional pain, is it? Or how
no,
would
I
you
can see
think
through
of
any pain. I could
any
see
pain? But,
why
okay,
people
why?
wind up in the
Okay.
situations. Like now
Ah,
you
okay.
understand from your cancer that didn't start with your physical body. You know
Mhm.
exactly what you learned to get you to the other side that you're doing the podcast today. That was it. We have what I say 5 bodies. In the Hindu tradition, we have our spirit self, we have our emotional, our vital, our mental, and then our physical. So think of all those bodies that we have to be disconnected from our emotions and our vitality and our everything till it hits the physical.
Mm.
And we ignore ourselves every day, all day. I didn't know why I was getting menstrual cramps. Yeah, Maureen, shut off all your power and pretend you're a superficial, bite and smile person. Be the model mother in commercials with the kids and things, but don't be deep. Don't be your true self. Don't be wise. Don't be powerful. Don't be the woman who you know you are. And I have to say something because it's in the headlines these days and things. Look, I was modeling at the time when Brooke Shields was the big model, and I had already gone through college. I had to pretend I was young because she was only 14, dressing up like a 30-year-old.
Mm.
Hello, guess where Jeffrey Epstein came from? I was in that world the entire time. And guess what? I had my little crucifix on me going to the back of the churches all the time.
My God.
They called me the Madonna in Italy because they knew that I was going to church. I did not
Mm.
get messed up in that. I knew it was happening
Okay.
because everyone knew it was happening. It was the world that I was occupying. I was a body. It was part of
Mm.
the collective trauma pain that had me have the menstrual cramps.
Yes.
Come on,
Well,
we're waking up as women here now powerfully, and
mm.
there's no holding back, and there's also no middle ground.
Mm.
We are powerful. We are
Yeah.
the most important beings on the planet. We bring everything to life.
Yes.
And now it's time for us to bring this miraculous nature to life. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. My God, Maureen. I'm
My God, all of
speechless.
us are divine
My
goddesses.
divine goddesses. Exactly.
Oh, my divine goddess.
Yeah. And do, oh my God, like anyone who's listening, going, I want that. I want,
Yeah, and you
but
have it.
yeah,
The best news is
yes.
you have it. Like that's all I've ever
Mm,
taught for these last 30 years. And I've been, where the mother will write me with send me the suicide note for their 16-year-old daughter who has a noose around her neck and send me the suicide note. And I'm like, okay, I'll be there tomorrow. And guess what? They come out laughing. the first time we speak, because I'm speaking about who they are directly from the divine to them. They were thinking that something's wrong with them because they're sensitive here on this planet, because they are wise and because they're not allowed to be, because we have been silenced in a way that we silenced ourselves because it was safer. Safer. The only thing that's safe, as we spoke about, is to follow the divine will.
Yeah.
Tell me where to go. Tell me what to do. Tell me what to say and to whom. And the fun part of it is we were both speaking about this just briefly before we started to speak on the podcast. We both go where we're told. We both
Yeah.
do what we're told to do. That's what we're doing now for the rest of the collective of humanity. We're not doing anything but showing up and being ourselves, our true selves now, surrendered to our true selves.
Mm.
So I can't stop before we get to that, back to where we started about death. There is no death. There is no death. So when we have this idea of a vengeful God that we misinterpreted, going back into the heart of the divine, free of the encumbrances of this body, because think of any pain you've ever experienced in life. Hello, it has to do with this. Any pain, because you feel separate from another person, because, he's a body, you're a body, she's a body. Anything that has to do with pain and problems on this earth is the body. Now, I'm saying this after, I'm taking good care of this body. I've taken good care of this body for a long time. Why? Because it's my vehicle for communication. Because if I show up and I look like, I went to freaking Harvard. I know how to be a body effectively here. But that doesn't mean that that's a label for me. I just do that so that more people accept this body in all ways, the scholars, the business people, everybody. Sure, I'll show up whatever you need me to be so that I can remind you who you really are. And that's the only reason to be on the face of this earth for everyone. Everyone's forgetting, people. Let's give everybody a break. Give everybody a break. Know that everyone's doing the very best they can. If you have a challenge with your sibling, with your parent, with your spouse, they're doing the best they can. If they're doing a miserable job, it's because they're sucked into the illusion, hook, line, and sinker. They think they're separate from the divine. They forgot that they're loved. They're in a place of fear. If you give them a break, what happens to you is that you remember who you are. And then you can show up. And guess what? The more you can be your true self, the more you watch how other people have only been waiting for somebody to give them permission to.
Yeah.
Everybody just wants somebody who's going to do it first. Hey, if we're really truly the light of the world, and if we're supposed to be like starbursts, somebody has to do it first in order for other people to be able to show up and remember who they are. So don't wait around now. That's the message here. Don't
Yeah.
wait around now. We have a finite time on this planet. We all came. Anyone who's listening to this specifically, you came here as the light of the world. You came here as the miracle, because you wouldn't be listening. You would have left this podcast thinking these ladies are really weird a long time ago.
But they seem happy enough.
But they seem happy enough.
Even despite different things,
Right.
difficult
But if
things
you
happening.
watch the life that we lead, if you watched my life paved in miracles every day, and you just looked and said, holy moly, that's what it looks like. If you watched what this looks like for us, that we can do things like move through gracefully the death of our parents and loved ones, that guess what? That's not real. Then we get to use those experiences as more and more fodder for the fire, the divine fire that I said I was feeling the day that I woke up. We literally are meant to live with hearts on fire, that purify all of our perceptions and all of this, and that have no specific object. I was in love with everything. Those 3 days, everything. There's nothing that I can't, this is what the divine feels for us every day. And we're afraid of the divine. To surrender to
Yeah.
that, to surrender to that. So
It,
just back to the whole idea and concept of death. So again, I've been counseling people and one-on-one for 30 years now. I kind of made it so that only people find me word of mouth, or have found me up till now word of mouth, because I knew, look, if I can see through pain, which I can, the whole world is in pain at one point or another. I'm gonna kind of like have to protect my space here as a contemplative, because I do love to be in a contemplative space too. And so someone found me via word of mouth. I had helped family members with drug addiction and things. And so she had breast cancer. And so she was going through that, and she was a very healthy skeptic. She was a mathematician, accountant kind of person. And she did not like her, if it weren't for her relatives insisting that she call me, and they just say, like, call Maureen. Most people don't give like a big prelude. They just say, well, call Maureen. And so we started talking, and she was very like, any of the things that I was saying divine wise were kind of like a little bit abrasive to her, but we kept talking. And as we were talking, she started to do things like yoga and self-care and things like this. We had been talking for a while. And so she was opening up more and more, and she went into remission with her breast cancer. She was actually out the other side. And we kept talking. And one day, while we were talking, I was speaking with her because her stepdad passed away. And he had brought her up. He was like her real dad. And she was talking with me because she was, fearful for her mom. She felt sad for her mom being left alone. And we were talking and had spoken one week. Well, I spoke with her every week. So I was walking through a park that's near my home. And I usually, when I'm talking to clients, because I talk to so many, I like to walk lots of times when I'm talking, or else I'd be sitting,
yeah.
down all day. And I like to walk. So I go through beautiful nature places like parks and things. And so I'm walking through the park, and I look up the hill. And just as I said, you know, beings like Jesus and Buddha and master beings can come back in the physical. And as I said that, I look up at the park, and I see my dad walking towards me. Now, she knew my dad had passed about 2 years before that, because she was a client of mine. And I see him walking down the hill, and the same shuffle, the same everything, same kind of jacket my father had. And I'm watching this as I'm talking with her. And I'm saying, well, this guy's going to get less and less looking like my father as he comes down the hill. And instead, he's looking more and more like my father as I'm on the phone with her. So as he comes and walks right, like not even an arm's length next to me, walks right by me, every hair on my body stood up. And it's my dad. And I just stopped talking because I couldn't talk. And she said, hello? Hello? I said, something just happened. And she said, what? I said, my dad just walked past me. And she said, oh my God. Now, this is the woman who was the healthy skeptic. She said, oh my God. Oh my God. Do you want to run after him? And I thought, why didn't I think of that? I turned and I looked, and he was turning the corner towards my house. And I said, no, I don't. And I realized, because this is not, I've had many encounters with many people, and lots of, in talking to people in the most dire circumstances in all these years, the most dramatic pain in prisons and hospitals, and kids were shooting each other. Like, I'm on the front line. I've been on the front lines for a long time. And everything is a miracle, by the way. That's the one thing about the most dramatic circumstances. They're always, a miracle is imminent. They're side by side. It's parallel worlds, and people can access it like jumping train tracks, to if they only knew they could. And so uh, after that, I had known that when people come back in the physical, it's not like if you want to touch them, they're going to dissolve typically. So I knew it wasn't for me to run after him.
Mm.
A week later, I heard that Karen had a stroke and passed away unexpectedly. It wasn't related to the cancer, maybe the treatments, I'm not sure. And the interesting thing is that I knew that was my dad doing that for her to prepare her for her transition, because she talked about, she was all on board. She totally believed that was my dad. Now listen to this one. It gets better.
Oh, I've got
So
chills.
about a year or so later, I get a call from her sister-in-law. She says to me, "You have to call Karen's mom." And I said, "Really? Why, is she having a problem?" She said she saw Karen. And so I called her mom, and she started to tell me she wouldn't tell anybody. She wouldn't talk about it. That's why they were saying that I should call her. And she was afraid that people would think she was crazy and put her away. So she
Mm.
only wrote down in her little day book, K for Karen, the time and the date. And then she said she couldn't contain it anymore. So she told her neighbor across the street who had Alzheimer's, because she thought, well, she'll forget. I told her.
Oh, that's
But so what
incredible.
happened to her, this is, and like, just because I wanted to make sure
Mm.
you heard this story since your mom just passed, and
Mhm.
because you're of the same mind that you'll be open and not afraid. The biggest thing is not to be afraid, to be open and say, I'm willing and ready. And then, and my dad, by the way, he came from the minute he passed away the next week. I wound up with a medium in an event that I wasn't even planning on being at. And my dad emceed the entire event practically. She was like, Arthur, after, after, because he kept showing up, he wouldn't shut up from the minute I got there. And so, anyway, so then her mom said to me that she was sleeping on a recliner chair in the living room because she hadn't been able to sleep much. And so she was on the chair, and she woke up and the lights were on. And the dog, Karen's dog, who her mom inherited, a little cute little dog, was sitting at on the bottom of the recliner and staring straight forward. And she
Mm.
said, I looked up and I saw Karen standing in the room, smiling at me, glowing, smiling at me. And the dog was staring at her. That's how she like woke up, because the dog was there. And she said, I knew I didn't leave the lights on, and the lights were on. And she said, when she said, I can't believe I said this, I feel so stupid now. But I said, how did you get in? The doors are locked. And then she said, I realized what I was saying. And then she said she looked so beautiful, she looked so peaceful. And she said, can I hug you? And that's when Karen started to dissolve. And she was right at the bottom of the recliner. A couple of weeks later, I think it was a couple of weeks later or a week later, she again woke up in the night because she was sleeping on the recliner, and she said this time Karen was a little bit further away and she was glowing even more. And she said, I took that as a sign that like she was ready to go into the light. But she said, she spoke with her telepathically
Mm.
and said, I'm fine, everything's great, I love you. And then she disappeared. So I love that story just because it's a continuum, And Karen,
Yeah.
after Karen passed, her siblings gave me. She had recorded every session that we had, and she recorded the session where my dad showed up,
Wow. That's
and so
incredible.
so and all it was me like saying something happened, and and that. But so I just wanted to say with you, with the relationship that you have with your mom, and because of the fortuitousness of our conversation and the
Mm.
timing and all the things that we've been speaking about, just be aware she's probably really ripe and ready to give you lots more signs. And you said she's been showing up, huh?
Oh, she has from the
Yeah.
day, and I don't want to make this sorry, but I think for people listening, like this is
It's
so
very good and
expansive. It's
important.
very, because there's another thing I just want to say connected to something else you said, and it's all connected with this. And I think, as we started talking about the synchronicities and asking every day to be shown, I mean, I've said that really since cancer, but even more so now. And as you said, Maureen, like everything does work out greater than you
Oh,
can ever have. I couldn't be doing anything I'm doing if I even tried to plan it. But my mother, literally, from the moment she took her last breath, I could feel her fill the room and beyond. I mean, it was,
that's
I just got, I literally, and I said it to someone I bumped into today that I haven't seen in years, just before speaking to you. I said, I had this sense of, oh my God, I literally was bowing, going, oh my
yeah.
God, who was I the daughter of? This is, I mean, I still am like
But
in
that's
awe.
your receptivity too. That's your receptivity too, because, and I know exactly what you mean about the room filling
Mm,
because I had a dog that passed, and when he left his body, he came through me, and the room filled. And again, that, and I know that because my daughter didn't want to be there, and so she was in the car. And I ran out to the car to get her to come into the room because the feeling was so beautiful. I would never have done that to my daughter if it felt awful.
mm,
And the
mm,
room was so peaceful. And
mm.
just like you said, because you're open and because you're aware. I mean, talk about the benefits that you experience when you're aligned with the divine.
Yes.
Like they are
Yeah.
incomparable to anything that the world could offer you.
They
To
are,
be able
thank
to
you.
feel
Yeah.
that.
And I'm just getting more of it, like listening to you and the life you've lived. And I'm now going and I'm trying to tell people it's only in a short span. I mean, cancer opened me up to something, but my mother, I'm like every day wanting to to grab someone. She came to a friend of mine and sent a message through her that she wrote down, and there's been a variety of things. But what you mentioned earlier as well, Maureen, just for people again, I might be saying this again sounds. I'm not saying they probably crying out for it, and maybe it's just being in the energy of what you're sharing can shift something for people, isn't it? That sort of grace that comes in if we're open. When you said surrender, well, you said a couple of things, but when you talked about working with people who like could be in prisons or really, really extremely difficult situations, and you said the train tracks, they can jump tracks. Can you talk a little bit about that for? I mean, I imagine you're saying like I went through grief. Okay, the idea of the loss of my mother, cancer, which were the
Mhm.
catalysts for me to jump on another train. So is
Right.
that sort of what you're saying, that there is that
Well, and
potential?
that's really important and powerful because I do believe that we almost make pain like an idol or a god, that all of us are here trying to avoid pain at all costs. And then when there is pain, we let that run everything and get all consumed with it
Mm,
instead of realizing that there is a bigger picture going on behind the scenes always. So I'm going to give another short story about that. So I'm on the phone with a client of mine who is a medical doctor, and he said to me when we got on the call, I had it was what a day, what a day. It was a big, rough day. I was in the emergency room. It was like crazy chaos and nutty, and the operating room or things like that. And I said, well, I promised the divine early on I would only speak about things I know. And since I mostly use like alternative health, I've never been in a hospital and I don't know about that, but I can tell you, about maintaining peace in crazy situations and things, but don't know specifically, what you were experiencing in the hospital. So we hang up and it's a beautiful day. It was fall. And so I figured, let me take a walk. I put on like running shoes, didn't have a phone with me to wasn't on my phone. I might have had it in my pocket. And I went through the park where to go to go Whole Foods is nearby. So I wound up I had a spice that I maybe needed a little bit, but didn't really need. So I took this nice walk on a beautiful day towards the Whole Foods. And when I got out to where the street is, something happened that I fell. I caught this with, I had running shoes on. I caught the sidewalk and went smack down without being able to do anything but go boom, with my hands both there. And I knew it was bad on my way down because time slowed down a little bit. And I looked
Oh.
and saw a bus it was rush hour, and there was a bus of people, and everyone on the bus went like this. I saw them hands like go
Oh my
like
God, you
this.
saw them.
So I went, oh, this isn't good as I'm going down. And when I got down, I knew I broke my wrists or and so I went into the gas station and sat down on a chair like right inside the door, and I said, because I started to all of a sudden feel faint. And so I sat down and I said, do you have some water? And the guy ran to go get some water. And then I see these legs in front of me because I'm sitting like this in the chair. And the person said, can I help you? And I look up and I said, who are you? And he said, I'm the ambulance driver for that ambulance that's right there that was pumping gas. You need to go to the hospital. So within 15 minutes of hanging up with the doctor saying I've never been in the hospital, I'm in the hospital. I get the red carpet treatment into the emergency room. Didn't even have to wait in the waiting room. Because when you come in an ambulance, they take
Whoa.
you right into a room. And I'm sitting there watching everything he had been talking about on the phone. So I'm very aware of life as a dream. I dream lucidly. In the world of the miraculous, where you know that the divine is real and that only love is real and nothing real can be threatened, only love is real, nothing real can be threatened. Herein lies the peace of God. That's in the Bhagavad Gita. That's in paraphrasing it from A Course in Miracles. If only love is real, I'm sitting in this place watching and thinking, oh, phew, I must really love this client if I'm here in the emergency room 15 minutes after saying I can't talk about that because I don't know it firsthand. So as I'm sitting there, one of the nurses comes up to me and she said, yeah, they're definitely broke. I broke both my wrists. And so I'm sitting there and she said, we can't get the osteopath, or we can't get the doctor today. You're going to have to go home. Sorry to say this. We're going to have to send you home until tomorrow. And here I am with two broken arms. And so she said, do you want us to give you something for the pain? And I looked at my wrists and I looked at her and I said, well, let me get this straight. You said my arms are broken, right? And she said, yes. And I said, well, then they're supposed to hurt, right? And she said, yeah. And I said, no, I'm okay then. I don't need anything. Because it means that my body's working to me. And I also know how to breathe. I also know how to get to a place that I can be peaceful. And she goes to the nurse next to her. She goes, oh my God. She goes, are you kidding me? You see that woman over there? She's been screaming for pain medication for the last half hour and there's nothing even wrong with her. And you don't want to, she said, please just take a prescription or something. So I was like, okay, just to make her happy, like my claw hands trying to grab
Oh my
something to
God.
take. And they called a cab for me and I got home. But it was because the fear wasn't there. Do you see how fear
Mm.
amplified? Like, feel back to your cancer days.
Mm.
How much of the pain had to do with the tightening of fear and the unknown and the
Well,
challenge of that as well. And I'm
mm.
not minimizing
No,
anyone,
no,
and
no,
I'm
no,
not saying
no.
everybody has to have no
I
medication for it.
know, I
I'm definitely
know.
not saying that.
No, but
But I had
yeah,
no fear. I
I
knew its
understand.
story was
No,
too lucid for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, well, I get it because I'll tell you, which is probably I I didn't have fear around the cancer. I had fear before. This was the interesting thing. I had so much fear and tightness and what am I doing in this life? I just can't live like this. And when I got the diagnosis, like when you said the cement, that is what I felt. I felt after I got over the shock, it was like, oh my God, I can stop. This is amazing. I can
Yeah.
stop. So I really going through it, apart from the discomfort of certain things, but um, I literally had no fear about death. I never feared death from the
Oh,
moment
see,
of the
that's wonderful.
diagnosis.
Now,
It
now
was, I feared
again,
death before, probably, but no, I was like, I said that so often. It was like being cracked open, this big cage being taken off me. What you've described, this forgetfulness. It was like I had a car accident as well before. It was like, there's nothing else. We have to do something greater with her. She's never going to get it.
yeah. And you said something really important because all these years, 30 years of helping people
Mm.
navigate the world of pain and drama and things, I am telling you, it's pretty easy to, and it's not necessarily a psychic ability, but to watch the trajectory of someone's life. I've worked with addicts and people, and I'm like, okay, you better listen because I'm telling you, if you don't listen, then watch out. And I've had somebody who didn't show up for an appointment, and I'm like, whoa. Then their parents called and said, I called and said they're not here. Oh well, and I said, well, just watch. It's gonna be a hit upside the head. Sure enough, they got hit by a car. They didn't get killed, but they got hit by a car when they
And
didn't
do you
show up
think,
for me
yeah,
because if I'm giving them the pure fastest route to get out the other side, the divine's going to say, you better pay attention here and take advantage. We all get a pure route, by the way. It isn't our life is our spiritual journey. Each one specifically customized to awaken us the most effectively. And if at any point in time you say to yourself, there has to be a better way, that is the most important thing you could ever say. There has to be a better
mm,
way.
yes, I remember saying that there has to
Um,
be another way. There
there
has to be
has
another
to be another way.
when you're
And if you
living.
say that, the
Yeah.
divine is on it because all we need
Okay.
is a little teeny tiny bit of willingness, just a little bit, and then the divine jumps in wholeheartedly for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Maureen. You have, oh my God, it just so much you've shared. So the potential, as you're saying, from all you've shared is, well, the potential, but the time really it feels like we're being even more supported now than
I,
ever.
I I do believe
Do you
that,
feel that?
again, there's a line in A Course in Miracles that I absolutely love. If you knew who walked beside you always, you would never have fear again. And there are legions of divine beings that are around us always. And, now leading the whole pack is your mom, like
Yeah.
my dad, leading the whole. This is something that my dad said when that medium that I wound up synchronistically the next weekend. I had the first weekend free that I hadn't had anything to do in the longest time since I was driving to go help him every weekend and cooking his food and things. And I was like, what am I going to do? And boom, this thing pops up that was grief relief. And it was a medium. And I said, well, I don't have grief over this because I know where I was like, yay, dad. And right away, he already immediately showed me signs. I'd asked for signs and I got them immediately. But I said, lots of my clients are in grief over people passing. I'll go see this. Well, I was listening to her. I just have to say this one thing because it'll help also people who might have had someone
Mm,
pass. So
mm,
I'm in the audience and I had decided I'd just gone through the funeral and met, all these cousins and people who I hadn't seen in years. And so I was talking for the week before. And this was again, the first time I had a weekend with nothing to do. And I was planning on being completely anonymous, not talking to anyone, just relaxing and listening to this woman and hearing people. I did not want to be the person who speaks. And so I'm sitting there listening to her on the first night. She had an introduction talk, and it was going to be a whole weekend. And there was only one room that left that somebody called right before I called to cancel. And otherwise, the entire place was filled. And so I knew there's my space. And so I'm listening to her speak, and she said that there are several ways that that people who passed on speak with us. And I knew about most of them. So if it's mostly young guys and things, they turn lights on and off. Remember Karen's mom having the lights
mm,
on. They can turn lights on and off. They can work electricity because they're energy. So they're able
mm,
to do that. They sometimes you'll hear a loud thud or a picture will fall off the wall. And then she said that someone could call you and it's the wrong number and they'll ask for their name. They will have, some people will come by, music, songs that they loved will play randomly. Someone will say something that's a private joke that only you and them knew, just like you're walking by in passing. And then she said, the last one that she said was, and then there's pennies and dimes. And I was like,
Oh.
huh, I don't know about that one. I knew about all the other ones, but I didn't know about pennies and dimes. So I said, and then she said, does anybody have any questions after she finished her introduction? And I raised my hand, thinking, again, I'm going to be anonymous the whole weekend, but I raised my hand and I said, you mentioned pennies and dimes. I never heard of that before. And what does that mean? And she said, well, I'm not specifically sure what it means, and I know now, penny and dime, 11, 11, like 11, 11, 1, 1. It's all one. But I didn't know that then. And so she said, why do you ask? And I said, because my dad just passed away 2 weeks ago, maybe like a little less than 2 weeks ago. And I have a pocket full of pennies and dimes. I'm finding pennies and dimes everywhere I go. And that was very, very indicative of my dad, because when we were little kids, we'd go to the beach and he'd put his big toe in the sand and uncover a quarter. He was always the guy that was finding money. And so here I am with this pocket full of pennies and dimes. And she said, oh, really? Come up here. I'm like,
Oh.
oh no, I'm the first person and I thought I'd be invisible. And so I go up to the front of the room and she said, the reason I brought you up here is because you said your dad passed just a couple of weeks ago. And up until just this past month, I could only speak with people that had been gone for more than a year or two. And then all of a sudden, I had an event a few weeks ago where everybody in the room had someone who just passed away. And I realized I can now speak with people who just passed away. So I'm bringing you up because your dad just passed. So I'm standing there in the front of the room, and being a mystic myself, I see my grandparents arriving, my aunt, my uncle, everybody, and my dad's in front of my mom. And I had said to my mom, and I had already had an experience. I said, Mom, get him to leave because he was in pain. Get him to leave. Throw a party, bake a cake, do something. And so the night that he passed, when my brother told me, I left so I could go home and meditate and help him like leave. My brother called and said, Dad just passed, and I smell cake I smelled cake so strongly. And I was already in bed that I went down to the kitchen to say, did I leave something in the oven? The whole house smelled like birthday cake. Like my mom baked the cake and got him to the other side. So here I am in front of the room now, and she's talking. I see everybody arrive. My mom's all dressed up and everybody's there. And then she says to me, Willie's here, his brother was there. And I said, yeah. I didn't say I see them because I'm like not wanting to say
Oh, yes.
that I'm in front of the room. But I hear him say at the same time she says that he says, this is the best thing that ever happened to me in my whole life. That's what my father said about death. This is the
Wow.
best thing that ever happened to me in my whole life. So we can end on that note. There is no death. There is nothing but life, eternal love. The only love is real. Only the divine is real. And we're dreaming an impossible dream that we think we have to work so hard at maintaining, when really, in actuality, let it go. Let it go. Just relax. The one who relaxes the most wins. Just let yourself
Mm.
trust your heart of hearts, and trust your open mind that gives people the benefit of the doubt, and allow yourself to the core of you just to surrender to all the beauty and the grace and the wisdom and the power that you are, because the world needs us all awake right now. We've got our divine miracle marching orders now. We've got them.
Thank you for the marching orders, Maureen. That was incredible. That was incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
just,
incredible. We're human
oh, we
beings that
are.
are
We
major
are.
beings, incredible, all of
Yeah.
us.
But this is, as you said, from just you showing up as you and seeing it in others, I can feel it come alive in me, and I'm sure everybody listening can. So that's really all we need. Well, all we need to do, but just by the power of that, like the power of how I feel now, having sat with you and just feeling the energy.
And again, if we knew who walked beside us always, we'd never
Mm,
have fear again. So letting yourself just be quiet from time to time throughout the
mm,
day. If things feel stressful or hard, that we're hard on our bodies. These
mm.
are our vehicles for communication, but let ourselves just relax every so often. Sit down and breathe. Just breathe, remembering you came in with your first breath. Every time you breathe, you're connecting to the spirit of you. That's your spirit inspiring you and animating you. You would be a pile of bones if it wasn't for this breath. Just let yourself breathe and connect. And then ask tell me where to go, tell me what to do, tell me what to say and to whom, and I will to do it and nothing more.
Think more. Thank you, Maureen
Thank you,
Whitehouse,
thank
so
you.
much for your
Oh,
time
and we
today.
just have
Yes,
miracles across the ocean here now, all the
we
way
sure
from
do.
here
We
in the
sure
States through
do.
Ireland. Everybody in
Yeah.
between, you're all being bombarded and blasted with
Yes,
miracles.
yes. That was
We
just
need this.
fabulous. We sure do. And if people want to, just finish by saying if people want to connect with you, are you seeing people or what's the best way? Use
There's a wait
courses?
list. People could
Mm.
get on the wait list for that, but I'll give you a gift. Meditationformiracles.com. Meditation with the number 4miracles.com is a wonderful meditation that I created to get you into this space, even when we're not like speaking live like this. It's a really beautiful meditation to get you to see the miracles in your life while you're listening to that. And then also, I have a membership site that we're just about to open the doors of probably next month. It's called the Miracle Meeting Place. And that's just, there's a wait list on the page right now, but it's miraclemeetingplace.com. Miraclemeetingplace.com. And it's
Perfect.
going to be wonderful. We're going to have we have a big community that we've just been building and doing the whole back end for. I've done miracle meeting with a selective group of my clients. I wanted them to meet each other and know each other because they were all now miracly oriented people who I worked with one-on-one. And so I built this with that as the intention. So there's like 200 hours of talks that I've done and all search engine optimized. We've just been building this whole thing over the last year. So pretty fun.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. I'll put all of those links below. It's time, more and more is needed.
Yeah.
It
Get us
really
all in
is.
that miracle mode. And I hope we
Yeah.
speak again because I know that this keeps going and
I
growing and
know.
this
I
is no
know.
end to this.
No, no, you'll definitely be back. And I know I'm sure people will be asking. So thank you so much,
Awesome.
Maureen, for today. Thank you, everybody,
So
for
much love.
listening.
So much love.
Yeah,
And I
so
love
much
what you're
love.
doing for the world. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you. Take care, everyone. And until the next
Bye.
time, take care.
Bye.
Bye.